In Australia, there is a great tradition of craft. The issue here is that it's not intergenerational. And there are economic reasons for that, you know, the fluctuations of the dollar and the priorities of the economy, broadly speaking, are not and haven't been for many decades on manufacturing. And craft as a subset can be closely aligned to manufacturing. So what happens is each generation often needs to reinvent the narrative from scratch rather than attaching an existing imprimatur or an existing relationship to a market with some fresh ideas. So we don't have our Morosso or our floss lighting. I remember interviewing Piero Gandini, the CEO of Floss. His father was the CEO before him, and he said that Achilles Castiglione created the House of Floss, and Philippe Starck opened the doors to the public a generation later. So you've got these more bespoke, I guess you'd say crafted lights by Castiglione, and then 20, 30 years later, you get these rotomolded, much more affordable products riffing on that legacy and opening it up to a broader market, but still the legacy of the company is very much within the crafted. And we don't have that here for a number of reasons. And so there will always be, within each generation, a desire to have, to make a contribution in a way that is considered and handmade, but it, for one reason or another, does not extend beyond the niche or beyond a generation. From the moment that industrialisation replaced craft as the primary mechanism by which we owned things, plates, forks, knives, horseshoes, you know, if you want to kind of get into the minutiae of what it is that the craft practitioner and the artisan created for society, it took generations after the Industrial Revolution started to encroach upon that space for them to really replace almost everything that a craftsperson can do. And that's continuing today. You know, I talk to craftsmen who say that the role of CNC machining creates a kind of intimacy of surface detail that has replaced their capability, that up until recently only they, the hand wood artisan, was capable of affecting the surface of timber in that intimate way. And now a machine can do it. So you would have to say that to be a craftsperson is either implicitly or explicitly, always either implicitly or explicitly, political and social, because it's saying that the values of the object are non-disposable, they are local, they should be about a sustainable use of product. Then it gets to an issue of affordability. And who is willing to save up to have that $70 teacup, and that's the one they're going to drink from for 20 years and make sure that it doesn't get broken? Who's going to have that table that's $3,000 rather than $300 and then hand it down from one generation to the next? So that's always been the social, political, ideological position of craft, that the things of daily life are there for life. The power of social media makes it entirely possible to have a global voice making the smallest objects. You don't need the approval of a few entrepreneurs within Australia in order to find a place for your product in the marketplace. I would say from Broach experience, whilst being extremely grateful to those who have commissioned us, finding a way to work that matrix between myself as creative director, designers such as Adam Goodrum and Trent Jansen, and artisans to deliver products that are coming out on a weekly basis rather than once every 18 months is a more sustainable model than awaiting the email from a big commissioner, because those people inevitably they come with enormous expectations, because they don't get to make those commissions very often. They're very particular about who they grant that opportunity to. And so even though they could do it over and over again if they like, because they're invariably wealthy, whether it be a corporation, a government agency, or an individual, the sense is that the opportunity is limited, time is limited, and therefore it has to be right. The space for experimentation is not really there also, whereas focusing on smaller, less expensive processes delivers you more time, less expense, and therefore more opportunity for experimentation potentially. In order to start, I think the maker, the craft practitioner, anyone practicing in this space needs to immediately let go of the idea of power. You're doing it because you want to express an idea, to belong to a tradition. And then there's another part of the brain that needs to kick in order to make that sustainable, right? So there's that part which is, as John Warwicker says, practicing your craft and crafting your practice. And you can do that at the table. You can do it with your tools exclusively. But then there's the element of what's going to make this a day in, day out reality without needing a second job. How am I going to make this something that I do exclusively? And that means sales. And sales means marketing. And marketing's all about communicating an idea. And that can be very unfair for the maker, as it can be for the artist, because it requires the telling of the story twice. They've already told it through the object or the artwork, but the world of social media now and of conventional media requires that you have another story that you can relay to them that is exciting for people to read, for them to engage with in social media. It might be something relating to, it might be a narrative built into how you practice in your studio. Ariel Olesko is a great example on Instagram, hundreds of thousands of followers, practicing, I believe, out of Brooklyn. Her dog and her Brooklyn studio have a kind of social media phenomenon to it. So in Europe, it's been my experience that people have the designer maker or the craft practitioner have a team around them that help them with this. Or they're just really fastidious in every aspect of their business. Max Lamb, I would say, who we've commissioned work from in the past and have an ongoing relationship to, has always, since his RCA days in London, documented his work brilliantly and with great clarity. So really the power element, you need to discard it at the point of practice, and you need to fully enable it when it comes to the moment of communication. And where that power resides, whether it's in a global affiliation, I'm a part of this broader ideology, it doesn't have place specificity, or whether it's about being a practitioner in Waterloo, Sydney, or Brunswick, Melbourne, or some other part of Australia, is entirely up to the maker, but it's a separate part that springboards off the relatively egoless act of participating in the history of making. The future of craft in Australia is as it always has been. It will be piecemeal. It will be a very small percentage of the population who are emotionally and ideologically driven towards a less consumer life. I remember playing tennis with a German friend of mine and we had 2 tennis balls. And I said, I've got another canister in my bag, we can play with 6. And he said, then we won't love each ball. You know, like treat each one like it's maybe the last one, and then you may not play such crazy shots. So that mentality of loving each thing you possess rather than just having it because it suits a very temporary purpose is rare. And because we don't have an economy built around manufacturing anymore, we've let that go, and for decades already, and it's only continuing to decrease. There isn't a need to distinguish what we make through a culture feeding into it of artisanal dedication to excellence. So the ongoing reality for craft in this country is that it will be within the gallery scene, it will be fringe. What would I like to see? I would like to see that craft and design become more deeply entwined, especially within the obsessive parts of the culture. Homes, hospitality, even sport, outdoor events, outdoor leisure, surfing to everything else. There's great scope there to elevate what we're already passionate about with more objects that convey that intimacy. And certainly the commodification of our homes, the rampant creation of vanilla-flavoured medium to high density property developments could be so vastly improved if just the contact points from the door handle, the letterbox to the elevator cart to the balustrade up the stairs, if they just had some kind of intimate care and attention to detail. And that's where craft practitioners could jump in like that and make an enormous difference. Whether that happens or not is very difficult to predict or to know where to start making the change for it to occur.